very good morning and welcome to Morning Express on this 5th day of August 2020. My name is Michael Gitonga. Welcome to Morning Express, where we're looking forward to giving you news and reviews and updating you on the latest. We're going to be starting as usual with looking at what's making headlines on the dailies, but also we have more lined up for you.
And one of the hottest stories this morning is going to be that seventh-time failure by the Senate to pass the revenue allocation bill. And of course, this is going to be a ripple effect to the counties, even though there is a provision in the law that will have them get 50% of what is allocated in the last formula. So we're going to be digging deeper into that and seeing what to expect, given that this is the seventh time it has failed, possible realignments, if there will be any, and who might be the swing voters, or what compromise might be taken by the senators. But for now, let's get into it with what you can. But of course, remember, you can be a part of those conversations by telling us what you think on Twitter. I'm at Trix Ingado. Michael is at Michael G. Gitonga, and the hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express.
And as usual, we have a question for you, which we'd like to hear what your take is. And that, of course, is reflecting on that particular subject, which has also hit the headlines. And we are asking, has the Senate failed Kenyans by failing to unlock the revenue sharing stalemate? Has the Senate failed Kenyans by failing to unlock the revenue sharing stalemate? This is a record 7th time that it has gone before the Senate and has not gone through. And it looks like it's a protracted war. It even forms the basis of the headline for the Daily Nation, and it says revenue rebellion against Uhuru and Raila. And of course, we're going to be looking through that and weighing in later on to see what you think on that. But do let us know. The hashtag KTN Morning Express. Trix is at Trix Ingado. I am at Michael G. Gitonga. Do let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll be reading through your comments as we go along. But as usual, would like to start off with the dailies and looking at what's making headlines in the dailies this morning. And I am joined by via video link by Arnold Maleba, who is a governance expert. Good morning, Arnold, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And let's start off with the standard, where the burden of our aging civil service is the headline. And this is merely just describing not just the age of our civil service or the average age of the civil service being the older generation, but the fact that with COVID-19, it has thrown a spanner into the works. And that particular spanner is in regards to working from home. We all know that even as I am talking to Arnold right now, we are using technology. We are not in the same studio. He is at home. I am here. And via use of technology, we are still able to continue with this show. However, the civil service has been hit hard by virtue of the fact that, according to this article, majority of them do not use technology at home, and as a result, we have certain government offices that are literally ground to a halt. Arnold, a very dire, straits that we are in this regard.
Well, we have not had the practice of infusing in new blood in the public service for quite a while. The last time we had mass hiring for young people coming into the service was during Kibaki's time. Otherwise, the only young people who continuously join what you would call the public service are actually the police and the soldiers. Otherwise, the mainstream public service, bar for the teachers, largely it's the older folk, because of course in the days of old we somehow did not manage public service hiring very well, and therefore we brought in a lot of people not well done, and we have got quite a huge workforce. That workforce really strains the wages we do have, because you have heard us complain that we've got a very huge wage bill. This wage bill, of course, is not just about people getting salaries. It's also about taking care of their health and how they work, and then training them. If you were to probably look at the learning institutions, for example, without necessarily giving names, you'll realize that a certain university, for example, has lost up to 5 senior lecturers in a very short span of about 2 months. And you know how long it takes to actually capacitate an individual to a level where he is a lecturer and then a professor. Those individuals are high-value individuals. And because a lot of our universities are actually staffed by these older folk, let's start from that end.
Right.
You realize that we are taking a very serious hit. Even as we talk about people working from home, it's not just about working from home because they might not be technology savvy Of course, at the university level, for example, in colleges, we still have got lecturers using what you and I would call yellow notes. Guys who have their issue, or rather their stuff inside their head, and it's not written anywhere. And even if they have got notes, there are those old notes they still read. They've read them over time.
Right.
And in times when you have to get a video link like I'm doing from home, for them, it will actually be fumbling through paperwork and a lot of papers. If you were to interview some of them, you will realize that they have to fill their whole table with a lot of notes written to actually just get through.
All right.
We have had an aging service for quite a while, and you know that we have moved the retirement age, I think 3 times.
Right.
We moved it from 50, moved it to 55, then moved it to 60. We are still mulling around the idea that if we extended their age, or rather the retirement limit, then a few of them can actually drop off along the way. Those are actually policy options people use, though the critical fact analysis behind why they do that is never said. But one time too many why that is extended is because if we hold him higher, or rather longer, he will still be productive in a way, and then we will not have to pay their retirement dues that are quite heavy. The government has not been able to actually release staff who are ready for retirement because we do not have money. So that burden is ballooning, and then there's COVID, and COVID is not very friendly, of course, to everybody, but to the older folk and people with underlying issues, COVID literally isn't treating them very well. And that is the problem we have today as a country.
And maybe, Arnold, moving forward,
and find ways of actually infusing newer blood into the public service. We had a very good policy of bringing in about 10,000 young people after every 5 years. And then along the way, of course, that was shoved away, and here we are.
All right, Arnold, and maybe moving forward, how do we sort this out? Because COVID-19 has literally shaken us to using technology maybe earlier than we had prepared, but this is the new norm. This is the way forward. We are not likely to go back to where we were before, even if we did, not to the degree that we were. So we certainly need to ensure that our civil service continues, because some of those ministries that may be suffering, for instance, processing of land titles, registration of birth, marriages and deaths, registration of driver's license have literally ground to a halt simply because the people who maybe oversee that are not conversant or tech savvy, as we would call it.
Being tech literate is not a very difficult thing. Just being able to use your phone, being able to use the computer. Of course, there has been the fear of actually moving over. A number of people within the civil service, we even tried to introduce ICT into government long time ago. The first individuals and people to actually start using ICT in the 90s were actually government. But somehow, elements and segments within government were very rigid on taking on new technologies. So simply talking about being tech literate, that shouldn't be a problem. It's an easy crash program. It wouldn't be so difficult. There's still quite a number of young people, especially the people who run the COGS. The problem is that the people who do the approvals, the bosses, many times people who are, of course, above 50. And that is why the problem is because he has to count a check and he probably does not have the capacity to do at home.
Okay.
Also, it's a systemic issue. It's not just about the individuals. You will realize that some of the systems we've actually put in place, if it's about authentication, then you have to be in office, for example. And doing it outside from office becomes difficult. So we will have to balance.
We'll have to balance.
Probably dropping out a few checks and allowing processes to go through, or virtually just making these processes digital as they were and very easy. Because I do not still understand why we need... you can get your police clearance certificate online, you can get your KRA certificate online. Even an ID, you should be able, with one single source of truth, that was to do away with a lot of human input at different levels. So I'm thinking it's also time we made eCitizen a really digital platform.
Absolutely.
Not places where individuals can actually interfere and come through along that. But largely, I think also this is a wake-up call to the Public Service Commission. to rethink how they administer service to the people, because they are the core of service delivery in this country.
Absolutely. And of course, with the digital age comes the risk of security, but I believe that's something that can be dealt with. So that's the headline of the Daily Standard, of the Standard today, which is the burden of our aging civil service. But let's look at other stories in the Standard. There is an interesting story on page 2 of the Standard, why politicians want nickname on their ballots. Now, should a bill that is being proposed go through, they would now be able to put their nicknames on the ballot. So far, the law requires that you just have your official names, but we do know quite a number of politicians who possibly are properly or more popularly known with their, with their nicknames as opposed to their normal names, the kinds of Babayao, Kanini Kega, Sonko, Wamatangi, the list is endless. Your thoughts on this, Arnold?
I think that is actually, the bill is an attempt to actually speak to reality. For example, at any particular time, I have got about 5 names. All of them are, of course, given to me by parents, and a few of them that I got along the way. Out here, the brand will be easy. Anyone will actually know Maliba. It becomes much easier. If I said Arnold, then somebody will struggle to find which Arnold. But if I said Maliba, it's much easier. But if I end up on a ballot box, or on a ballot paper, then you find that I've got some 2 other names that people do not know. So it takes a bit long. So identity management, especially during making of choices, should be easy. I think that is the spirit of the Constitution. That choices should be made easier and simpler. Going to an election should be much easier. But somehow the laws, especially in the last 2 elections, have actually been very rigid. So, for example, there is what you are known for wherever you are running. And we are not in the business of knowing 2, 3 names. It's only in the media, by the way, where you guys are known by 2 names and it goes out as a brand. But out here, so many people are actually just known by 1 name. And I think politicians have come to the realization that sometimes marking out and identifying your candidate becomes problematic when they have got so many names. And it gives especially the folk who are not very, who do not have the time to read. And we also are assuming that a lot of our voters are literate. We want every vote. As a politician, you would want every vote. So I think it's a point in the right direction, and I hope that the law goes through. The only thing is that I'm hoping that ballot papers are not going to be chaotic with very funny names. Again, also that lowers the quality of the election, even as we try to take care of small issues.
Yeah, hopefully.
But I'm thinking also it could be an issue where some people, we also need to start marketing ourselves using our names as they are. Even though we have got nicknames that are actually probably popular than the official names we use.
Than the actual names. Well, hopefully they find a middle ground where they can have their names, the official names, because again, there is the legal side of it. If you put somebody's name later on, could they jump gun and say that it's possible that the person who was on that ballot box was not me, because officially they may not be recognized with that names on their ID. So that could have a number of ways. So maybe the middle ground would be to have their official names as it appears on their identification documents, then still maybe in brackets have their nickname.
True. Of course, nickname bit of it should actually appear to where it is, because if you've looked at some of the official forms we fill, sometimes even the visa, and it even asks you if you have got any other name, if you've got a nickname, you've got names you dropped in the past. The only fear for me would be that the cluttering of the ballot paper. But if there's a way we can actually manage that so that both your official names as they were and probably your nickname probably in brackets, so that we have got 2 ways to go about it, so that I don't lose out votes just because the name I'm known for probably appears number 4 on the list of names, and the person who is reading is not keen at going through all the names.
Right.
Also speaks about our electoral knowledge and the process about awareness, how we approach elections as a people. It goes to actually inform the assumption that we probably do not think through our candidates very well. We don't take time to research about them. So when we are making decisions, we want the short end of it. As in, I have to look at you as Mike, and that is all I know. If it doesn't appear, it is Michael or Michaelson, and then I'm like, that is a different person.
Absolutely.
I think voter education also has something to do with this. We need to empower our voters, our electoral know-how, our understanding of elections and how we embrace elections should actually change largely, because that excuse, whereas it looks like it's small, it actually costs people votes. And it has got its legal side, it has got the challenge about the dignity of how we even carry out these things. But let us see how it happens elsewhere. People are known, because politics is serious business. If we will actually make it then look like it's some casual stuff where we refer to you with mtaani names and stuff, then also it impacts on the quality of people we bring in and even the processes.
Absolutely. And well, that's that. And let's look at something else on page 8. We have matters COVID-19, delay in test results causing avoidable deaths, says medics. And this again, of course, speaks to the daily numbers that we're given, the tallies that we're given. Because according to some of the medics interviewed in this particular article, it takes up to 2 weeks between the time of testing and the time of getting results. And of course, that delay has a ripple effect. Some people have lost their lives as they're waiting for the results, but also it also brings to question the numbers and figures that they get. When they say in the last 24 hours, what exactly are we talking about? Because those tested may not necessarily be giving us results. This, of course, needs to improve, Arnold, don't you think?
Of course, it needs to improve, and for the simple reason that it's about people's lives. It's also about the integrity of our health systems. If samples are going to take about 2 weeks, some samples actually get stale, they get spoiled and stuff. So probably it goes without saying that a number of the numbers we are giving, or rather the figures we are giving out, are not cogent data, because for 2 weeks and the way we manage, you will know locally how we manage our staff. Somehow, someplace, the margin of error is very high. If it takes 2 weeks to get tested, and probably your data comes out to a level where then we are accepting it. Two, I think from the very beginning, every time the government has come out and declared figures, they talk about in the last 24 hours. Initially, of course, it was in the last 24 hours, as it were, because largely the testing was within Nairobi, and the tape between when the sampling is actually, the samples are actually collected, testing, and then verified to when they actually made public, was slightly shorter. But now we are taking samples from everywhere, and a long time, whatever they declare is the tests then that have been through the system. You saw the other day, I think 2 times, the ministry has recalled results put out, because some of them are actually internal documents, but then the people who are preparing briefs for the daily media reporting then sometimes forget and put out what they are still working with. So, of course, the numbers as given to us are not necessarily in 24 hours, as it were, but the data that is ready within that particular time frame. It's
Absolutely.
not entirely that we have actually tested within time frame. So there's been a backlog, quite a backlog when dealing with that.
And hopefully,
I will say that I think we have our testing regime, the COVID management regime, in a way has collapsed. So we are just trying to manage up a few things, because contact tracing no longer works the way it was supposed to be. The numbers as given, we have corrected. Sometimes the numbers come out as so high and then they correct back. Sometimes they are low and then a correction comes in. So you see, that way of information management also speaks to the way the real testing is being done.
Absolutely, and hopefully we are going. There's light at the end of the tunnel, as per the article on page 6 of the Nation, which says scientists develop rapid test kit for coronavirus without sophisticated equipment or highly trained individuals. You could soon know your COVID-19 status in less than an hour. And of course, we are looking forward to that happening, because then that would give us more realistic figures as opposed to what we have now that seems to be, something that we could doubt based on what it looks. Now, let's look at the Daily Nation. And the headline is Revenue Rebellion Against Uhuru and Raila. I'm going to request that we skip that, because that's what you're going to be discussing in the next segment of this particular show. And of course, we have that question that we've posed out there. Has the Senate failed Kenyans by failing to unlock the revenue sharing bill? Has the Senate failed Kenyans? Do you think they failed Kenyans? The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you'd like to tweet, she is at Trixie Ngado. I am at Michael G. Gitonga. Let us know what your thoughts are. At the second part of this show, we're going to be dealing with that, and Trixie is going to be handling handling that. So let's move on to page 2, where we have another very interesting article. TikTok fans rage against Trump's threats of U.S. ban. And TikTok, of course, has become a very popular, app that is used mainly by the youngsters to communicate and to just have their way of communication out there. But Trump has come out to threaten that he's going to ban it in the U.S. Of course, the reason for his threatening to ban it in the U.S., he says, is because China may be siphoning information and may be going against some of the rules that they're supposed to using TikTok. But your thoughts on this and the war with U.S. and China that seems to always overspill to the rest of the world?
I think Trump's anger or angst against TikTok is not just about the security element to it. And by the way, it's also time the Americans also accepted the fact that what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. There is nothing out of the world that TikTok is actually collecting that American apps are not doing. So if the Americans are doing it, why should the Chinese not do it, for example, if you are to argue it from that platform? But luckily, there is also a small matter about a rally that Trump was doing, and those youngsters, we call them Generation Z and the Alpha generation, the TikTokers, they bought up and called the ticketing firms, and actually they thought that they had a stadium that was full, when it ends up that it was all a prank. And of course, the headlines all over the world at that particular day was the talkers actually make Trump's campaign meeting flop. That said, I think TikTok is facing a lot of fights across the world. Of course, India, for obvious reasons, India and China are not really in talking terms. So India had banned a number of about 100 plus apps from China, and TikTok was actually at the top because it's the most popular from that end. On this particular end, I do not think Trump is being real, because even Microsoft was in talks to buy TikTok operations in the US. That is one other aspect. I really do not know how the interplay between Microsoft wanting to buy TikTok operations in the US and Trump wanting to ban it in the US. For Trump, I think it's projection and trying to just take people away, the headlines from how he has managed the COVID-19 pandemic. So everything that is wrong about the management of COVID-19, but the solution he has is that you ban TikTok. Right. But he has been erratic. So I think it's not entirely for the reasons that are being said, because apps collect data, and TikTok is managed according to two app stores, large app stores that are used normally. Of course, the Play Store by Google, and then the App Store by Apple. So all of them are American actually Play Stores,
they collect
or rather app stores. Yeah. So definitely there are standards set by those two app stores, and I don't think that the two of them have complained.
All right.
If TikTok was violating that, it would be so easy for the two stores to actually come out and complain. They have not.
All right, and well, let's move on to something else. And page 10 of the Daily Nation. In Nyanza, COVID-19 has brought a windfall for the connected. And this is to do with billions that were coming from the national government, have benefited a few companies in Nyanza. And this, of course, is to do with COVID-19. But while on that, because that is, subject to some of this, interpretation of how this has been put across. But of course, the funds that have come through COVID-19 have been huge and unfortunately may have been mismanaged, and in some cases literally led to the death of some because of lack of, for example, PPEs and other equipment that was required for us to deal with COVID-19. This, of course, being unfortunate, but also looking at it on the backdrop of corruption. Your thoughts on whether we're winning the war on corruption, given some of these stories that are coming up?
I still do not think that we are winning the war on corruption because we have politicized the war. It is selective in the manner in which we actually carry it out. The agencies that are tasked with doing it, for example, EACC, which is constitutionally tasked with fighting corruption, has not been enabled sufficiently to actually take on this particular fight. So we then came up with the auxiliary units like the DCI, and then giving DPP a lot of power and trying to push through to just ensure. Yet we have got EACC here that somehow we do not feel like we should give them the power to go ahead and just do their work as is stated in the Constitution. But talking about what is happening in Nyanza, it's only a reflection of what is happening in the country, because there's been this running joke around that COVID, of course, will produce new solutions across the world. Mm-hmm. There will be new medicine, there will be new vaccines. But in Africa, of course, it will produce new millionaires.
Right.
For the last 2 days, you have seen reporting coming out that some of the donations we got actually found their ways to private hands, and then they were sold back to government for money. As in, that is corruption the Kenyan way. No one will actually be surprised. Sometimes I actually say that in the Kenyan context, when you see some of these things, the first rule is that thou shalt not be surprised.
Right.
2, you see that no one has actually been arrested for losing the donations that we got. You have seen agencies that were tasked with managing this coming out and then shamelessly not addressing the issues that come out. But we are a country, especially when it comes to looting, we are quite immoral. I know when it's a pandemic, we want to moralize this process because it's about human lives. And anything that touches to human lives should actually be treated with some level of morality. But that is not how we run this country. It's just a way in which there's a lot of impunity, and it's common. So out of these people are dying, common stuff. Just the same way the police will allow terrorists to come to Nairobi and bomb it. Just the same way people at the border at immigration take bribes and allow Al-Shabaab to come in. It's the same way the gatekeepers we have put within the Ministry of Health. In fact, you would actually say this, that whatever has been called the swamp is being drained at the Afia House. Normally, we sometimes, of course, colloquially we call them Mafia House. You start to think that probably there was no draining of the swamp at Afia House. What has been happening is that the swamp has been draining other people. As in, whatever is happening is that it's the cartels at Afia House that are getting rid of the critical voices. Because then at the end of the day, after we've been told about draining the swamp, the outcome is the same, which means that literally we are doing nothing. We're just going around this mountain and we are not leaving this camp. We need to break camp and move on. And it's just sad that even with people's lives, all we care about is actually making money.
Absolutely. All right, and well, that's where we're going to wind up our newspaper review. Thank you very much, Arnold Maliba, for joining us this morning on, well, just to look at what's making headlines on the dailies this morning. That's Arnold Maliba, who's a governance expert. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be having the discussion on the revenue allocation that has failed for a record 7th time. And that is the basis that we have the question. Has the Senate failed Kenyans by failing to unlock the revenue sharing stalemate? Has the Senate failed Kenyans by failing to unlock the revenue sharing stalemate? Is the question we're asking. We're going to be looking through some of your comments that are coming through in that regard. So for now, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, Trix is going to be handling that and looking at what this might mean for Kenya, and particularly the revenue allocation bill that has